My husband's jokes at Christmas dinner made everyone uncomfortable, but my mother-in-law's toast shut him down permanently. When Derek and I started dating, his sense of humor was one of the first things I fell for. We met at a coffee shop where I'd accidentally ordered a drink with a name I couldn't pronounce. He was behind me in line and offered to help. "It's a macchiato," he said with a grin. "But if it makes you feel better, I called it a macchiato for like 2 years." We laughed. He paid for my drink. 3 days later, we had our first date. Those early months were golden. Derek had this way of teasing that felt playful, like he was inviting me into a private joke rather than making me the butt of one. When I got lost driving to his apartment despite GPS, he called me his adorable disaster and printed out paper maps as a gag gift. When I burned dinner, he ordered pizza and said it was part of my charm. The teasing felt warm, affectionate, like he was saying, "I see your imperfections and I love them." I should have noticed when things started shifting, but it happened so gradually that I couldn't pinpoint an exact moment. It was like watching a photograph fade in sunlight. By the time you notice, the damage is already done. We got engaged after 2 years. The proposal was sweet, at the botanical gardens where we'd had our third date. His family seemed happy for us. His mother hugged me tight and whispered, "Welcome to the family." His father shook Derek's hand with pride. His brother Marcus made a joke about Derek finally growing up. The wedding was beautiful. I felt like the luckiest woman alive standing at that altar, watching Derek cry as I walked down the aisle. Our vows were traditional, but when he looked into my eyes and promised to honor and cherish me, I believed every word. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, like everyone said it would be. We argued about whose turn it was to do dishes, how to spend holidays, whether we could afford a bigger TV, normal stuff. But Derek's jokes started to have an edge I couldn't quite identify. When I asked him to help with laundry, he'd say, "Sure, since you clearly can't handle basic household tasks." When I suggested we stick to our budget, he'd laugh and tell his friends I was a fun killer who didn't understand how money worked. I'd bring it up and he'd look genuinely confused. "Babe, I'm joking. You know I don't mean it." And I'd second-guess myself. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe this was just how married couples joked around. By year 2, the jokes had an audience. Derek started making comments about me at social gatherings. At his company's summer barbecue, I was talking to one of his coworkers about a documentary I'd watched. Derek appeared with a beer, draped his arm around me, and said, "Don't mind Becca. She thinks she's smart because she watches Netflix." Everyone laughed uncomfortably. I felt my face burn. On the drive home, I tried to explain how that felt. "You embarrassed me," I said quietly. "How?" I was teasing. Everyone does that with their spouse. But it felt mean. He sighed, that exasperated sound that made me feel like a child complaining about nothing. "Becca, you're being dramatic. It was a joke. If you can't handle some light teasing, that's a you problem." I dropped it, but something had lodged itself in my chest. A small stone of resentment I couldn't quite dislodge. The pattern solidified in year 3. Derek's jokes became a regular feature of any social situation. At game nights with friends, he'd announce I was terrible at strategy games because I couldn't think 3 moves ahead. When we played trivia, he'd laugh at my wrong answers and stage whisper to the table, "She's pretty, but bless her heart." Our friends would laugh, but their eyes would dart to me, checking if I was okay. I'd smile and shrug, playing along. What else could I do? My friend Sophie pulled me aside one night after everyone left. "Hey, are you okay? Some of Derek's comments tonight were pretty harsh." "He's just joking around," I heard myself say. "That's his humor." Sophie looked unconvinced. "I don't know, Beck. My partner teases me too, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like he's actually putting you down." I made excuses for him. Derek was stressed at work. He didn't realize how it sounded. He'd grown up in a family where everyone roasted each other. He didn't know it bothered me. But deep down, I knew Sophie was right. The jokes weren't about shared laughter anymore. They were about making me small so he could feel big. The work holiday party was a turning point, though I didn't see it clearly at the time. Derek's company rented out a nice restaurant, open bar, the whole deal. I wore a dress I'd saved up for, got my hair done. I wanted to make a good impression on his boss and coworkers. Derek had been up for a promotion, and I knew these social events mattered. We were talking to James, Derek's supervisor, when the conversation turned to household finances. James mentioned he and his wife had just refinanced their mortgage. Derek jumped in immediately. "Oh man, I handle all that stuff for us. Becca's too," he laughed. "Let's say mathematically challenged to deal with finances." I tried to show her our budget once, and she looked like I was speaking Greek. James laughed politely, but his wife raised her eyebrows. I felt my smile freeze on my face. "That's not really—" I started, but Derek kept going. "Seriously, I have to control everything or we'd be bankrupt in a month. She once thought we could afford a vacation because we had money in checking. She didn't understand about bills coming due." He shook his head with performative exasperation. "It's like having a really pretty child." The table went quiet. James's wife looked at me with something like pity. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in the stall, shaking with humiliation. When I came back, Derek was laughing with his coworkers like nothing happened. The promotion went to someone else 3 weeks later. I wondered if that conversation had played a role. At home that night, I tried to confront him. "Derek, what you said to your boss, that wasn't okay. You made me sound incompetent." "Babe, relax. I was bonding with James. That's how guys talk. But you lied. I do understand our finances. We have a joint account. I see everything." He rolled his eyes. "It was a joke. Why do you always blow things out of proportion?" "Because it's humiliating. You told your boss I'm stupid." "I never said stupid. You're putting words in my mouth." His voice took on that sharp edge that meant the conversation was over. "You know what? I can't have a simple conversation without you making it into a huge deal. I'm going to bed." I stood in the kitchen alone, wondering when I'd become the wife who couldn't take a joke. Game nights got worse. We had a regular group, Sophie and her boyfriend Matt, another couple named Anna and Kevin, and usually one or two others. We'd rotate hosting, play board games, drink wine. It used to be fun, but Derek had started using these nights to workshop new material. One night at Anna and Kevin's place, we were playing code names. I gave a clue that didn't work out, and our team lost the round. Classic Becca, Derek announced. Great at looking thoughtful, terrible at actually thinking. Anna frowned. Derek, that's... Oh, she knows I'm kidding. Right, babe? He reached over and squeezed my knee in what might have looked affectionate but felt like a warning. Later, we were talking about a news article. I shared an opinion, and Derek literally laughed. Becca reads headlines and thinks she understands policy. It's adorable. Matt shifted uncomfortably. Sophie's jaw was tight. I felt heat creeping up my neck. I actually read the whole article, I said quietly. Sure you did. Derek winked at the group. She's very thorough. Takes her 20 minutes to read what takes normal people 5. The room went silent except for someone clearing their throat. Kevin changed the subject, but the evening felt poisoned. When we got home, I was shaking with anger. Why do you do that? I asked. Do what? Make fun of me in front of our friends. Every single time we're with people, you have to tear me down. Derek sighed like I was exhausting him. They're jokes, Becca. Everyone jokes with their spouse. You're the only one who has a problem with it. Because I'm the only one you're doing it to. You don't see Matt making fun of Sophie's intelligence. You don't see Kevin announcing Anna's flaws to the room. That's because they're boring. People like me because I'm funny. I'm entertaining. If you can't handle that, maybe you should stay home. The words hit like a slap. Stay home. Like I was an embarrassment he had to manage. I turned away before he could see the tears. My promotion came through at work in November. I'd been working toward it for over a year, taking on extra projects, proving myself. When my boss called me into her office and told me I'd gotten the senior position, I actually cried from relief and pride. I called Derek immediately. That's great, babe, he said, distracted. Listen, I'm in the middle of something. We'll celebrate later. We didn't celebrate. He forgot to mention it that evening. When I brought it up at dinner, he said, oh right, the promotion thing, that's cool. More money, right? I should have known what would happen when we saw his family. We'd started gathering at his parents' house more often since we'd gotten married. His father, Robert, was a retired accountant who had strong opinions about everything, politics, sports, the right way to mow a lawn. His mother, Patricia, was quieter, the kind of woman who kept the house running smoothly and rarely contradicted her husband. Marcus, Derek's younger brother, worked in sales and had inherited their father's competitive streak. The Sunday dinner after my promotion, I was excited to share the news. We sat down to Patricia's pot roast, and she asked how work was going. Actually, I got promoted, I said. I'm now senior manager of our customer success division. Patricia's face lit up. Rebecca, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Robert nodded. Good for you. They must recognize hard work. Then Derek chimed in. Yeah, they probably needed to fill a diversity quota. Right, babe? He winked at me like we were in on the joke together. They've been under pressure to promote more women. Lucky timing for you. The table went silent. Patricia's smile faltered. Robert looked at Derek with something between surprise and approval. Marcus smirked into his wine glass. I felt something crack inside me. That's not... Derek, that's not why I got promoted. I earned this. Sure, he said, waving his hand dismissively. I'm just saying the timing worked out. No shame in that. There's no timing. I've been working toward this for over a year. You know that. He laughed. Babe, you're getting defensive. I'm on your side. I'm just saying sometimes these things are about optics, not just performance. It's business. I looked at Patricia, desperate for someone to call him out. Her mouth was pressed in a thin line, but she said nothing. Robert had already moved on to complaining about his golf game. Marcus changed the subject to his own recent sales numbers. I excused myself and sat in their bathroom, staring at my reflection. My promotion, the thing I'd worked so hard for, had been reduced to a diversity checkbox in front of his family, and no one had defended me. Thanksgiving should have been my first warning about Christmas. We drove to his parents' house on Wednesday evening, the car packed with my homemade pies and the wine Patricia had requested. I'd spent all day Tuesday baking, trying to prove I wasn't the incompetent disaster Derek made me out to be. The house was full. Derek's parents, Marcus and his girlfriend Chelsea, Robert's brother and his wife, Patricia's mother. The dining room table was extended with all its leaves, covered in Patricia's good china. It should have been nice. But Derek's father dominated conversation from the moment we arrived, ranting about politics, immigration, taxes. Anyone who disagreed was brainwashed by the media. Patricia kept getting up to check on food, disappearing into the kitchen whenever Robert's voice got too loud. Derek seemed to feed off the energy. He was performative, loud, trying to match his father's commanding presence. And his favorite prop was me. When I brought out my pies, Derek announced, "Everyone say a prayer before you try these." Last week, Becca made cookies and confused salt and sugar. Even our neighbor's dog wouldn't eat them. Uncomfortable laughter rippled around the table. Chelsea looked at me sympathetically. Patricia frowned but said nothing. That's not true, I said quietly. The dog ate them. You're thinking of, babe. I'm pretty sure I remember my own dog's refusal to eat something. He turned to the table. She gets details mixed up. Always has. My face burned. Marcus jumped in with a story about his own cooking disaster, but the message was clear. I was the punchline wife who couldn't perform basic tasks. Throughout dinner, Derek kept going. When his uncle asked about our plans to buy a house, Derek said, "We're saving up, but it's slow going. Becca has a hard time not impulse buying. I had to hide our credit cards because she ordered like $50 worth of stuff online one night because she was bored." He did air quotes around the word bored. It was a weighted blanket I'd bought on sale after reading it might help with my anxiety. I discussed it with him first, but in his retelling, I became a reckless child who couldn't control herself. When Chelsea mentioned she was taking a course in graphic design and I said I'd love to learn something like that, Derek laughed. Becca? No offense, babe, but you barely figured out how to use email filters. Graphic design might be a bit advanced. Patricia stood abruptly and started clearing plates, her movements sharp. Robert didn't seem to notice. Marcus and Chelsea exchanged a look. On the drive home, I tried to bring it up. Derek, tonight was really hurtful. What are you talking about? Everyone had a great time. You spent the entire evening making fun of me, in front of your whole family, he groaned. Here we go again. Becca, you're so sensitive. My family jokes around, that's what we do. If you can't handle it, I don't know what to tell you. It's not joking when only one person is the target. Your family wasn't making fun of Chelsea. They weren't making fun of your grandmother. Because they're not as sensitive as you. They can take a joke. I stared out the window at the dark highway, feeling the familiar stone of resentment grow heavier in my chest. This was my life now, being slowly humiliated while everyone watched and said nothing. As Christmas approached, I felt a knot of dread forming in my stomach. We'd be going to his parents' house again for Christmas Eve dinner. Extended family, the same dynamics, the same audience for Derek's performance. I considered faking sick, but I knew Derek would accuse me of being dramatic or make it into another story about how I couldn't handle family obligations. I called my sister Jen a few days before Christmas. She'd met Derek a handful of times and always seemed to like him, but I'd never really talked to her about what was happening. Hey, I said when she answered. Do you have a minute? Always. What's up? I started to explain, and then the words just poured out. Years of jokes, the work party, game nights, Thanksgiving, how Derek made me feel stupid and incompetent in front of everyone we knew, how no one ever said anything, how I was starting to believe maybe I really was too sensitive. Maybe this was normal and I was the problem. Jen was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then, Beck, that's not normal. That's not joking. That's emotional abuse. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. I'd thought about gaslighting, manipulation, humiliation, but abuse felt too big, too serious for what was happening to me. I don't know, I said. He doesn't hit me or anything. Abuse isn't just physical. He's systematically tearing down your self-esteem in public. He's making you feel worthless. That's abuse. I felt tears coming. I don't know what to do. You could leave. You know that, right? You could just leave. Could I? We had a lease together. Shared finances despite what Derek told people. A whole life built together. The idea of dismantling it all felt overwhelming. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I admitted. Okay, but Beck, promise me something. If it gets worse, if you need to get out, you call me. Anytime, day or night. You can stay here as long as you need. Thank you, I whispered. And for what it's worth, you're not too sensitive. You're not stupid. You're not any of the things he says you are. He's the problem, not you. After we hung up, I sat on the couch and cried. It felt like someone had finally given me permission to acknowledge that this wasn't okay, that I wasn't crazy for feeling hurt. But I still had to get through Christmas. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. I'd made another pie, this time double-checking every measurement, every ingredient. I wore a red dress Derek had once said he liked, though he barely looked at me when I came out of the bedroom. The drive to his parents' house felt like riding toward an execution. The house was decorated beautifully. Patricia had outdone herself with lights, garland, a massive tree in the living room. The dining room table was set with her Christmas china, red and gold everything. It should have felt festive. Instead, I felt like I was walking into a trap. Derek's energy was different as soon as we arrived. He was amped up, almost buzzing with excitement. He hugged his mother, clapped his father on the back, joked loudly with Marcus. I recognized this mood. He was preparing for a performance, and I was about to be the opening act. We sat down to dinner. Derek and me, his parents, Marcus and Chelsea, Robert's sister and her husband, Patricia's mother, who everyone called Nana. 10 people around the table, candles flickering, ham and sides and my pie waiting on the sideboard. Derek started before we'd even finished passing the rolls. So Becca made a pie, he announced to the table, gesturing at the sideboard. Everyone say a quick prayer, it's edible. Remember Thanksgiving? The salt and sugar incident? That wasn't, I started. But he was already moving on. I'm just saying, let's all be prepared for an adventure. Last week she tried to make banana bread and somehow forgot the bananas. I don't even know how that's possible, but she managed it. Polite, uncomfortable laughter. Chelsea's smile looked forced. Patricia's jaw was tight, but she said nothing. Robert started talking about traffic on the way over, and I thought maybe that was it. Maybe Derek would settle down, but I should have known better. When Robert's sister mentioned she'd seen me at the grocery store and asked about my work, I started to explain my promotion. Before I could get 3 sentences out, Derek cut in. Oh, the promotion. Yeah, that happened. He reached for more mashed potatoes. They probably just needed to fill a diversity quota, honestly. Right, babe? He looked at me with that performative smile, inviting me to laugh along. Companies are under so much pressure these days to promote women regardless of— Derek, Patricia said sharply, but he didn't stop. I'm just being realistic. It's great for Becca, don't get me wrong, but let's call it what it is. Timing and optics. He took a bite of ham, casual, like he hadn't just reduced a year of my work to a checkbox. The table went silent. I felt my face burning. Chelsea was staring at her plate. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Robert's sister raised her eyebrows. That's incredibly disrespectful, I said quietly. Derek laughed. Babe, don't be sensitive. I'm happy for you. I'm just saying, I know what you're saying. You've said it 3 times now. My voice was shaking. You're saying I didn't earn my promotion. You're saying they only gave it to me because I'm a woman. Well, I mean, he shrugged, still smiling. It's a factor. Patricia stood abruptly and started gathering plates that still had food on them. The movement was sharp, aggressive, but she didn't say anything, just disappeared into the kitchen. Derek seemed energized by the tension. He kept going throughout the meal. When his uncle asked about our holiday plans, Derek launched into a story about how I'd suggested we drive to my parents' house tomorrow and couldn't understand why he'd explained it wasn't practical. She doesn't think about gas costs or timing. She just wants what she wants. It's like dealing with a toddler sometimes. When Nana asked if we were thinking about kids, Derek said, I don't know if Becca could handle it. She can barely keep our apartment clean. Imagine adding a baby to the mix. He laughed. I'd basically be a single parent. Each comment landed like a small cut. Individual, they might have seemed like nothing, but together they were death by 1,000 paper slices. I excused myself to the bathroom, the same escape I'd used at Thanksgiving. I locked the door and gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. My eyes were red-rimmed. My carefully applied makeup was smudged. I looked exhausted. I looked defeated. When had I become this person? The wife who smiled through humiliation? The woman who let her husband use her as a punchline? 5 years of this. 5 years of being made small, of swallowing my hurt, of telling myself I was too sensitive. 5 years of Derek telling me it was just jokes. I was overreacting. I couldn't handle normal teasing. 5 years of watching other people laugh or look away while he systematically dismantled my dignity. I thought about Jen's words. You could leave, could I? What would that look like? Finding an apartment, dividing possessions, telling people my marriage had failed, admitting I'd stayed this long in something that hurt me so deeply. But what was the alternative? Another year of this? 5 more years? 20? Growing smaller and quieter until I disappeared entirely? I washed my face, fixed my makeup, and took a deep breath. I could get through tonight. Then I'd figure out what came next. When I came back to the dining room, dessert was being served. My pie sat on the sideboard, untouched. Patricia had brought out a store-bought cake instead. The message was clear. Even she didn't trust my competence. I sat down without comment. Derek was in the middle of another story, this one about how I'd cried watching a commercial for dog adoption. She was sobbing, full-on sobbing over a commercial. I had to pause the TV and get her tissues. She's so emotional about everything. Robert laughed. Marcus shook his head with a grin. Chelsea was pointedly looking at her phone. She's basically a child, Derek continued, warming to his theme. Honestly, I don't know what she'd do without me. Managing finances, making decisions, keeping track of appointments. She'd be lost. His father nodded approvingly. Better you than me, son. I couldn't handle that level of maintenance. Marcus added, Yeah, Chelsea's pretty independent. I can't imagine having to babysit my partner. Derek grinned like he'd won something. It's exhausting sometimes, but someone's gotta do it. I felt something break inside me. Not a dramatic snap, but a quiet, final fracture. I'd reached my limit. I opened my mouth to speak, to finally defend myself, to tell Derek and his father and everyone at this table exactly what I thought. Patricia stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She picked up her wine glass, hand trembling slightly, and raised it. I'd like to make a toast, she said. Her voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. Everyone quieted. Derek leaned back in his chair, that confident smile still on his face, expecting praise or sentiment. Patricia looked directly at him. Her expression could have carved stone. I'd like to say something to my son, she began. Derek, I raised you to be a kind man. Your father and I taught you that a partner is someone you protect, not someone you perform for. Derek's smile faltered. Mom, I wasn't finished. Her tone could have cut glass. The table was utterly silent. I have sat at this table and watched you spend the entire meal treating your wife like a comedy routine, making her small so you can feel big. Derek's face had gone pale. His mouth opened and closed. Robert looked stunned, like he'd never heard his wife speak this way. Your grandfather, my father, treated your grandmother like a queen every single day of their marriage, Patricia continued. Her voice was steady, but I could see her knuckles white around the wine glass. He would have walked through fire before he humiliated her in front of anyone, let alone family. He believed a man's job was to build his wife up, not tear her down for entertainment. Mom, seriously, I was just joking. About what? Her intelligence? Her competence? Her worth? Which part of your wife's dignity is supposed to be funny? The silence was absolute. Marcus had frozen mid-reach for his water glass. Chelsea's eyes were wide. Nana was nodding slowly. But you, Patricia said, and her voice cracked slightly. You've turned the woman who loves you, who committed her life to you, into a joke. You've made her the punchline of every story. And for what? To get a laugh from your father? To feel superior? To prove you're entertaining? Derek tried again. I didn't mean, it's not like that. It's exactly like that. I've watched it for years. At Thanksgiving, at Sunday dinners, tonight especially. And I've said nothing because I told myself it wasn't my place, that you two would work it out. But I can't sit here anymore and watch you abuse someone I care about. The word abuse hung in the air. Derek flinched like she'd hit him. I am ashamed, Patricia said, and her voice broke fully now. I am ashamed to call you my son right now. I raised you better than this. I taught you about respect and kindness and treating people with dignity. And somehow you've become a man who thinks cruelty is clever as long as you're smiling when you do it. Tears were running down her face. She wasn't bothering to wipe them away. So here's what's going to happen, she said. You are going to apologize to Rebecca. A real apology. Not your usual, sorry, you're upset, non-apology. You are going to acknowledge what you've done. And then you're going to go home and think very seriously about whether you want to be a husband or a bully. Because right now you can't be both. She set down her wine glass without drinking from it and sat down heavily, like the speech had taken everything out of her. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the crackling of the fire in the living room and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Derek's face had gone from white to red. His hands were shaking. He looked around the table like he was waiting for someone to laugh, to tell him this was all part of the joke. But Robert was staring at his plate. Marcus looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Chelsea was crying quietly. Derek turned to me. His expression was somewhere between shock and panic, and something that might have been genuine fear. "Babe," he said, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean, I was just..." "Don't," I said quietly. The word came out steady, stronger than I felt. "Don't apologize because your mother told you to. Don't apologize because everyone's watching. Either you understand what you've done or you don't." "I was joking," he tried weakly. "You know I love you. I was just making me feel worthless, making me doubt myself, telling everyone I'm stupid and incompetent and childish. Which part of that says love to you?" His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stood up, my legs shaking but holding. I picked up my purse from where I'd set it by my chair, grabbed my coat from the rack in the hallway. The whole table watched me in silence. Patricia stood and walked over to me. She took my hand in both of hers, squeezed it tightly. Her eyes were still wet with tears. "You deserve so much better than this," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I'm sorry I let it go on this long. It's not your fault," I told her. "But thank you. Thank you for finally saying something." She hugged me, quick and tight. "If you need anything," she whispered, "anything at all, you call me." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying. I walked out of that house without looking back at Derek, got in my car, started the engine with shaking hands, and drove. I didn't have a plan. I just drove, Christmas lights blurring past my windows, until I found myself pulling into Jen's driveway. She opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. "I left," I said, and then I was sobbing. "I left him." "Good," she said fiercely, hugging me. "Good." I stayed at Jen's through Christmas and into the new year. Derek called constantly, dozens of times a day at first. I ignored every call. He texted paragraphs. He was sorry. He didn't realize how bad it had gotten. He'd change. He needed me to come home. We could work through this. Please just answer the phone. I didn't respond. He showed up at Jen's house on December 27th, rang the doorbell repeatedly, called my name from the sidewalk. Jen went out and told him to leave or she'd call the police. He left. He came back on New Year's Eve. Same thing. This time Jen did call the police. They told him if he showed up again, she'd get a restraining order. Patricia called me on January 2nd. "I wanted to check on you," she said. "Make sure you're okay." "I'm at my sister's," I told her. "I'm okay." "Good. That's good." She paused. "Derek is not handling this well, but that's not your problem. I just wanted you to know that what I said at Christmas, I meant every word. You didn't deserve any of that." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. "That meant more to me than you know, that you finally said something. I should have said it years ago," she said quietly. "I watched it happening, and I told myself it wasn't my business, that you two were adults. But it was wrong. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." After we hung up, I cried again. Not from pain this time, but from something like relief. Someone had seen me. Someone had validated that what was happening wasn't okay, wasn't normal, wasn't my fault. By mid-January, Derek had shifted tactics. The apologetic texts stopped. Now they were angry. I was overreacting. I was throwing away our marriage over nothing. I couldn't take a joke. If I came home, we could work it out. But I needed to stop being dramatic. I blocked his number. He started emailing. I blocked that too. Finally, at the end of January, he sent one message that got through before I blocked his new email address. "Fine. If you want to throw away 5 years over some jokes, that's on you. But I'll come to therapy if that's what it takes. One session, to prove you're overreacting." I thought about it for a week. Talked to Jen, called Sophie, finally called a therapist, and scheduled a couples session for mid-February, 3 days after Valentine's Day. Derek showed up late. The therapist, Dr. Morrison, was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She had us sit in separate chairs, not on the couch together. "So," she said, "tell me why you're here." Derek jumped in immediately. "Becca left me right before Christmas because I made some jokes she didn't like. I'm here to show her I'm willing to work on our communication." Dr. Morrison turned to me. "Is that accurate?" "No," I said. "I left because Derek spent 5 years systematically humiliating me in front of everyone we know. He'd make jokes about my intelligence, my competence, my worth, in front of his family, our friends, his co-workers. And when I tried to tell him it hurt, he'd say I was too sensitive. They were jokes," Derek said. "She's making it sound worse than it was." "Can you give me an example of one of these jokes?" Dr. Morrison asked him. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, like, I'd tease her about forgetting things sometimes, or tell funny stories about stuff she'd done. That's what couples do." "What kind of stuff?" "Like, she'd burn dinner or get confused about directions or whatever. Normal stuff everyone does. I'd just point it out in a funny way. In front of other people? Yeah, sometimes. At family dinners or parties. Just keeping things light." Dr. Morrison made a note. "And how did Becca react when you did this?" "She'd laugh along, or she'd be fine, until recently when she suddenly decided everything I said was a problem." "Becca, how did you feel when Derek made these jokes?" I took a breath. Humiliated. Small. Worthless. Like I was the stupidest person in every room. Like my only value was being the punchline so Derek could get a laugh. "She never told me that," Derek interjected. How was I supposed to know? I told you multiple times, I said, my voice rising. After the work party, after game nights, after Thanksgiving. I told you it hurt and you said I was too sensitive. You said I couldn't take a joke. You made me feel crazy for being upset. Dr. Morrison held up a hand. Derek, I'm hearing that Becca did communicate her feelings to you and that you dismissed them. Is that accurate? I didn't dismiss them. I just didn't think it was as big a deal as she was making it. So you chose to continue behavior that your wife explicitly told you was hurtful? Derek's face flushed. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was just being funny. Everyone laughed. Who is everyone? My family, our friends. They thought it was funny. Did they? Or did they laugh because the situation was uncomfortable and they didn't know how else to react? Derek didn't answer. Dr. Morrison turned to me. Becca, can you tell me about the incident that led to you leaving? I described Christmas dinner, the promotion comment, the ongoing jokes, Patricia's speech. Derek kept interrupting, trying to minimize each example until Dr. Morrison asked him to let me finish. When I was done, she was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Derek. What you've described is a pattern of public humiliation, whether you intended it as humor or not. The impact was that you regularly diminished your wife's intelligence and competence in front of audiences who couldn't escape. That's not teasing. That's verbal abuse. Verbal abuse? Derek's face went red. That's ridiculous. I never called her names. I never screamed at her. I made some jokes. Abuse doesn't require screaming or name-calling. Systematically undermining someone's self-worth, especially when they've asked you to stop, is emotionally abusive. The fact that you smiled while you did it doesn't make it less harmful. Derek stood up. This is bullshit. You're totally biased. You probably hate men. I came here in good faith and you're just attacking me. Derek, Dr. Morrison said calmly, I'm not attacking you. I'm giving you feedback based on what both you and your wife have described. If you're not ready to hear that feedback, I'm not doing this. He looked at me. This is a waste of time. She's already decided I'm the bad guy. You both have. He grabbed his coat. When you're done being dramatic, call me. But I'm not sitting here and being vilified for having a sense of humor. He walked out. The door slammed behind him. I sat in the silence that followed, staring at my hands. I'm sorry, Dr. Morrison said gently. He's not going to change, is he? Not unless he accepts that his behavior was harmful. And right now, he's deeply invested in believing he's the victim. I nodded. Something inside me settled, became certain. I'm going to file for separation. That's your choice to make. But for what it's worth, I think you're making a healthy decision. I filed the paperwork the next week. Derek responded with shock and anger. He couldn't believe I was throwing away our marriage over one therapy session. He told our friends I was overreacting, that I couldn't take a joke, that I'd left him over nothing. Some people believed him. A few mutual friends stopped reaching out to me, either because they thought I was being dramatic, or because they didn't want to get involved. That hurt, but it also clarified who my real friends were. Sophie and Matt invited me to dinner and told me they'd been worried for years. We wanted to say something, Sophie admitted, but we didn't know how. We're sorry. Anna called and asked if I was okay. Kevin and I talked about it after that game night, she said. How Derek treated you wasn't okay. We should have said something. The separation took months to finalize. Derek dragged it out, hoping I'd change my mind. He tried to make it about money, about the apartment, about who got what furniture. His lawyer painted me as unstable, a wife who'd abandoned her marriage on a whim. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Susan, shut that down fast. You documented the incidents? She asked me. I had. After Christmas, I'd started writing everything down. Every joke, every comment, every time Derek had dismissed my feelings. I had texts from Sophie asking if I was okay. Emails from Derek's own mother expressing concern. Susan smiled grimly. Good. We'll need this. Patricia called me a few times throughout the process. She never defended Derek, never tried to get me to reconsider. She just checked in, made sure I was eating, asked if I needed anything. How is he? I asked during one call because I couldn't help wondering. Angry, she said honestly. He's playing the victim, telling everyone you left over nothing. But Rebecca, I want you to know, I don't believe that. I saw what happened, I know what he did, and I'm proud of you for leaving. Those words meant everything. The separation was finalized in June. Derek got the apartment. I took what I could fit in my car and moved into a small one-bedroom closer to work. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one made jokes at my expense within those walls. I started therapy. Real therapy. Just for me. Dr. Chen helped me work through years of internalized shame and self-doubt. We talked about gaslighting, about emotional abuse, about how slowly someone can erode your sense of self until you don't trust your own perceptions. You're not too sensitive, she told me in one session. You're actually quite resilient. You endured years of systematic emotional harm and you're still here, still yourself. That takes strength. I cried. I'd needed someone to say that for so long. By fall, I was starting to feel like myself again. The person I'd been before Derek, before the constant worry that I'd say something stupid or do something wrong. I went out with friends without the background dread of being made fun of later. I made decisions without second-guessing myself into paralysis. I spoke up in meetings at work without hearing Derek's voice in my head telling me I'd probably get it wrong. One day in October, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me, like he was considering pretending he hadn't noticed me. But I walked up to him. Hey, I said. Hey, how are you? I'm good. Really good, actually. He nodded awkwardly. That's good. Listen, I wanted to say, what happened at Christmas, Mom's speech and everything, it was intense. It needed to be said. Yeah, maybe. He looked at his shoes. He's been telling everyone you overreacted, that you left him over some jokes. I know, but Chelsea and I were talking, and I don't think that's what happened. I think Mom was right. I think we all were kind of assholes for laughing along all those years. I didn't know what to say to that. Anyway, Marcus continued, I'm sorry, for my part in it. I should have said something. Thank you, I said quietly. That means a lot. He nodded and left, and I sat down with my coffee feeling something like closure settling over me. Patricia called me on Christmas Eve, almost a full year after that dinner. I wanted to check in, she said. See how you're doing. I'm good, I told her. Really good. I'm having dinner at my sister's tomorrow. Low-key and drama-free. She laughed. That sounds perfect. She paused. Derek's here tonight. He brought a date, actually. A woman from his office. Oh, I waited for the jealousy or hurt to hit, but I felt nothing. Just a distant hope that he'd treat her better than he'd treated me. He's being very attentive, Patricia continued, almost performatively so. I think he's trying to prove something. But Rebecca, I wanted you to know, I'm not buying it. What happened with you, what he did, I haven't forgotten, and I never will. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. Thank you for seeing me, for finally saying something. I should have said it sooner. You said it when I needed it most. After we hung up, I sat on my couch in my quiet apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, wasn't bracing for a joke at my expense, wasn't second-guessing every word out of my mouth. Derek's still telling people I left over nothing, according to Sophie. He's got a whole narrative about his crazy ex-wife who couldn't take a joke. Some people believe him. Some people think I overreacted to normal spousal teasing. But I know the truth. Patricia knows the truth. My sister knows. My friends know. And most importantly, I know. I didn't leave over nothing. I left because I finally understood my worth. I left because a woman who barely knew me, my mother-in-law, stood up at a Christmas table and told her son he'd become a bully. I left because I deserved better than being someone's punchline. It's been over a year now since that Christmas dinner. I still think about it sometimes. Patricia's face when she stood up, her voice shaking but certain, the complete silence that followed, Derek's shock when he realized no one was laughing with him anymore. I think about how many people probably saw what was happening over the years. Friends who exchanged uncomfortable glances, family members who frowned but said nothing. How many of them told themselves it wasn't their business, it wasn't that bad. The couple would work it out. Patricia could have made that same choice. She'd made it for years. But that night, she chose differently. She chose to speak up, to name what was happening, to tell her son that his behavior was unacceptable. She chose me over family loyalty. She chose truth over comfortable silence. I sent her a card on Mother's Day. I didn't know if it was appropriate given that I was no longer married to her son, but I wanted her to know what her words had meant, how they'd given me permission to trust my own perceptions, how they'd helped me understand that I wasn't crazy, wasn't too sensitive, wasn't the problem. She called me when she got it. You didn't have to do that, she said, but I could hear the emotion in her voice. Yes, I did. You saved me that night. You gave me my self-respect back. You always had it, she said gently. I just reminded you where to find it. Maybe that's true. Maybe somewhere inside me, buried under years of jokes and dismissals and gaslighting, there was still the woman I'd been before. The woman who knew her worth, who trusted herself, who didn't accept cruelty disguised as humor. Patricia's speech didn't create that woman. It just gave her permission to resurface. I'm dating again now. Nothing serious, just getting back out there. It's strange after 5 years with Derek, learning to trust someone new, but I'm also learning to trust myself, to recognize red flags, to speak up when something doesn't feel right, to walk away from anything that makes me feel small. On my first date with a guy named Alex, he made a joke at my expense, a small thing, barely noticeable, about how I'd mispronounced the name of a wine. The old me would have laughed along, would have spent the rest of the night watching for more jokes, bracing for humiliation. Instead, I put down my glass and looked him in the eye. Hey, that felt a little mean. Can we not do that? He blinked, startled. Then he nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. That was unnecessary. There wasn't a second date. We didn't have much chemistry, but the moment stuck with me. I'd spoken up. I'd set a boundary, and when he'd responded dismissively or told me I was too sensitive, I would have left right then. That's the real gift Patricia gave me that Christmas. Not just the validation of one moment, but the template for every moment after. The understanding that I'm allowed to name harm when I see it. That speaking up isn't dramatic or sensitive or overreacting. That people who care about me will hear me when I say something hurts. Derek's still out there somewhere, probably telling jokes at some new girlfriend's expense. Maybe she laughs along. Maybe she's learning, like I did, to make herself smaller to fit his need to feel big. Maybe his mother will speak up for her too someday. Or maybe, if she's luckier than I was, she'll recognize it sooner. She'll leave before 5 years pass. She'll trust herself before she needs someone else to validate her pain. I hope so. I really do. As for me, I'm rebuilding. It's slow work, learning to inhabit myself fully again, learning to trust my own intelligence, my own competence, my own worth. Some days are harder than others. Some days I still hear Derek's voice in my head telling me I'm getting it wrong, I'm being stupid, I can't handle basic tasks. But then I remember Patricia standing at that table. I remember the steel in her voice when she said, I'm ashamed to call you my son. I remember her hand squeezing mine, her whispered promise that I deserved better. And I pushed Derek's voice aside and listened to my own instead. That's the real ending of this story, I think. Not the dramatic dinner or the separation or even the healing. The real ending is me, alone in my apartment, making decisions without second-guessing myself into paralysis, laughing without wondering if I'll pay for it later, existing without fear of being turned into a punchline. The real ending is me remembering I was never the problem, and maybe that's enough.